Hi guys, today we're going to look at supply curve shifts and factors that causes these shifts. In my last video, I looked at the definition for supply and how to draw the supply curve, as well as a little bit of PES. Today we're going to look at shifts in the supply curve and factors that causes these shifts. So as we look at the supply curve and the supply curve shifts, this is not a movement along the supply curve, as I said in my previous video. This one is more to do with outside factors causing the whole supply curve to either shift outwards or inwards. And it has nothing to do with a change in the price, whereas a movement along the supply curve was due to price changing and that affecting the quantity supplied. Here my price for that product or that industry is a constant one and not changing. As you can see over here, if I take this price as 20, it's not price that has changed, it is other factors, and we're going to look at those factors. I just quickly want to show you what it looks like. So when there's an increase in supply, we say that it is an outward shift, so again away from the P-axis or the price axis, and an inward shift is a decrease in supply moving towards the P-axis. But there's also a reason for this. If I actually go and look at these three supply curves that I have over here, this one is my original one. I'm always going to start with the original, and then this one is showing an increase, and you can see from the same price as 20 there, the quantity over here could say be 100, and now moving to say 150. So you can clearly see that there's an increase, a complete outward shift in the supply curve. Now if I look at S2, S2 represents a decrease. So you can see as well, from going from the original S curve to S2, my quantity is decreasing. Let's make this say 50. So there is a reason for this. A lot of students will just go and memorize the shifts and say, okay, well, this way around is an increase, that way around is a decrease. That's also fine. But I just wanted to show you that there is a mathematical reason for this. So the price stays the same, but you can see at the various points, if I had to draw a horizontal line throughout, the price stays the same, but the quantities are changing. And it is wrong to say that that is an increase, because if I'm looking at S to S2, those 2 points there, I can see it went from 100 to 50. It's definitely not an increase going to that side. An increase is towards this side, and a decrease is towards that side. Let's look at factors that causes the supply curve to shift. So firstly, we're going to look at factors that causes an increase in the supply curve. So in other words, an outward shift from S1 to S2 in this example. Our first factor is other products become less profitable to produce. In other words, the market is allocating the resources to this product, let's call this product A, and moving away from, say, a product B that is now not as profitable to produce. So it's all about the allocation of those resources linking in with our economic problem, which is unlimited wants and needs and limited resources. Let's look at factor number 2, a fall in the costs of factors of production. So our factors of production again are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So if any of the cost to the company in terms of these factors of production decreases, it potentially means that the business would be able to supply more or to increase their supply. So, for example, if labor costs, which are normally your wages and your salaries, decreases, then the business would be able to maybe boost or increase their supply a little bit. The same goes with any of the factors of production. Say land cost decreases, or my interest in terms of capital decreases, and I could actually take out extra loans and expand my business operations. Factor number 3, an increase in the supply of resources. So that just means if I am using a lot of raw materials or just resources in general that I need in order to make my product or to provide my service has increased, the availability of those, it actually creates the potential for my business to also increase my supply. Factor number 4, technical progress and improvement in production processes and machinery. With technology, it has made it possible for businesses to do things quicker, to increase their output, and to do it more efficiently and with less errors. It's not just limited to my manufacturing industries, where I do use a lot of machinery, like Coca-Cola, etc., businesses that are really capital intensive and are focusing on using a lot of machinery to get their production out there. But, I mean, you can also look at it from a service point of view. Say, for example, I have a hotel. And now, before I used to do a manual system where I booked rooms, and it was a whole messy process. Now with technology, oh wow, I have these online booking systems. I have all these automated systems that are actually making my life so much easier and avoiding mistakes in terms of the bookings. So that is amazing. And technology really has helped a lot of businesses. And that, again, can increase my supply. Let's look at factor number 5, an increase in business optimism and expectations of profit. This means people are very optimistic, business owners are very optimistic, and are actually investing more in their business, probably even expanding their business operations, and that could lead to supply increasing. That's normally when I'm looking at good economic conditions, like an upswing on my economic cycle, things like that. Factor number 6, the government subsidizes production and or cuts taxes on profits. I want to split factor 6 into 2 parts. Firstly, a subsidy. A subsidy is a payment by government to businesses to encourage production or consumption of a product. This should enable businesses to lower their prices and increase their provision of goods or services. The whole idea behind a subsidy is government provides businesses with financial aid. This is not a loan, and they want businesses to increase their service delivery or the amount of goods that they have available. And this is also in line with the idea behind decreasing prices. They want to make it more affordable for consumers. For example, subsidizing the local bus industry, your public transport. The whole idea is that it will be more affordable for people who can't afford their own private vehicles to actually get transport to and from work. The other part of factor 6 is indirect taxes or taxes. But I'm just going to explain indirect taxes because that really affects the prices of products. And that can actually also make it very expensive for businesses to provide these products because they also have a tax burden linked to that. So I know factor 6 says if there's a decrease in taxes. I'm going to show you the increase in taxes. So if taxes or indirect taxes are increasing, that is now your value added taxes or taxes on goods and services that you buy from any supplier or from the shop or wherever, then you pay a percentage tax on that. Normally that is called the ad valorem tax or a percentage tax on a product. And that, like I said, has a tax burden to the supplier. So it's going to affect the amount that they would be able to supply. If the indirect taxes decreases, they would be able to supply more, like point 6 suggests. If the taxes or the indirect taxes increases in your country, it would mean that you would be able to supply less because you have a tax burden as the producer. You can't put all the tax or indirect tax onto your client or your customers. Some of it you'll need to carry yourself. Factor number 7, other factors. For example, good weather boosts crops and harvests, especially in my agricultural industry, where my supply of goods actually depends really, really severely on good weather conditions. Now I want to look at the flip side, so a decrease in the supply. So going from S1 to S2, but it's an inward shift towards the p-axis. The factors are pretty much the same as the ones I looked at for an increase in supply, but now I'm just going to look at the flip side of each one very, very quickly. Let's look at factor 1 again. Other products become more profitable to produce. In other words, they're moving away from your product to another product's provision, and the allocation of resources are being moved to the other product, so going away from product B to product A, and there is a decrease in the supply of this not as popular product anymore. And then factor number 2, a rise in the cost of factors of production. So now my factors of production are more expensive, my labor costs increases, my workers want a higher wage. Now my cost to my company is increasing, and it is limiting me in terms of increasing my supply. Now I'm going to decrease my supply because it's more costly for me to provide these goods or services. And then we can look at factor 3, a fall in the supply of resources. So now my resources are more scarce. Maybe I'm using resources that are non-renewable, so like coal, for example, and the world can't just make more coal, and I am dependent on, say, maybe using coal, and then it can definitely affect my supply negatively. Then number 4, technical failures such as cuts in my power supplies or mechanical breakdowns. That's the thing of being very capital intensive. You are going to use a lot more machinery because you feel that machines are more accurate, or you just don't want to deal with the whole labor component. But it's going to cost you. You remember, you have to spend money on the maintenance and any kind of repairs on machinery as well, and also upgrades. So if you're not going to do that, then it can definitely decrease your supply because you need those machines. The same goes with your power supply. I mean, if your country has load shedding or just power cuts in general where they're trying to conserve energy or electricity, it's going to affect your business. Maybe you have to then invest in other methods like solar panels or whatever. That's also going to increase your cost again. That all of those things can definitely affect your supply negatively. So factor 5, a fall in business optimism and profit expectations. That could be due to recessions in your economy where demand has decreased and there's a lot of unemployment, or in cases now where we have COVID, where a lot of businesses were not that optimistic about what's going to happen in the future and definitely have scaled down their supply or dialed down their supply to supply less. Factor 6, the government withdraws subsidies and or increases taxes on profits. This tax can also be an indirect tax, for example, like your value-added taxes on goods or services. And when I'm looking at the direct tax component, so my corporation taxes, for example, if government increases that, it just means that the business has less money to reinvest back in their business or to increase supply. Tax is good for government, but it's not always good for businesses. So government withdraws subsidies. That means government is no longer giving financial aid to businesses in order to increase their supply. And a lot of businesses actually become very dependent on subsidies. It's like a crutch to them. They are expecting it. And if government takes that away, now all the cost falls on the business, and now it could result in my supply decreasing. Factor 7, other factors. For example, wars and natural disasters. Wars do take a lot of resources away from manufacturing goods and focusing on other areas, and maybe a lot of the factories as well have closed down. They don't have enough workers as well to work in the factories, etc. And it definitely can affect my supply and lead to a decrease. Same goes with natural disasters, where your resources now all of a sudden are scarce. That means natural resources as well as human resources, where I'm looking at labor. It can affect my supply negatively. And that is how supply curve shifts work and the factors that causes these shifts. I hope this video cleared up a lot of things regarding supply curve shifts and that it was helpful. Please go and like this video as well as subscribe to my channel if you found this useful, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.